Welcome to another Writer's Choice webinar. You write, and I choose from the selections. And actually, it's pretty easy because I just tally them up. And the ones with the most votes are what I pay attention to. Today is no different as we take a look at installing PaperCut in a multi-site environment. This pretty much piggybacks on the last couple of webinars where we talked about PaperCut in the enterprise space, as well as mobility print deployment types, which we did last month. I'm Doc Ballje, and sure appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day to join me. Pay attention, as you'll have your chance to win a very cool ACDI t-shirt or polo, as we'll be asking a question after today's presentation. Speaking of what we're in for today, we'll talk about multi-site installations of PaperCut when there are more than one print server. Then we'll look at site servers and how beneficial they are, and some more live stuff today. I'm asked quite frequently to do things live, so let's go for it and install a site server as well as mobility print. You'll see how easy it really is. Appreciate you joining us, and at the end of the presentation, there will be a survey. Hey, do me a solid if you would and fill that out so I can get an idea of what you want to see in some of the upcoming webinars. Falling back on the enterprise webinar a few months ago, we find that many people think that PaperCut is only for small organizations and can't be set up in environments with multiple sites and multiple print servers. Well, of course it can, and it's still a great idea to do it this way. I know that in many discussions I've had with IT these days is to move off of local servers. They just don't want anything to do with them. Quite a change from just a few years ago when you couldn't pry a server out of an IT person's hand as they wanted full control of the network. Now with cloud architecture, even infrastructure as a service, I can understand why this process is going on. It actually makes sense in a lot of ways. Where it not might make sense is with your printing. There are several applications that need to expand the file for printing purposes, things like Point. That's one of those programs. Graphic designers using InDesign also create file sizes that can be in the gigs. Now push that through an internet pipe. Wait for your job on the other side. No, it can be unbearable. A few companies that I've spoken with recently have put their printing in the cloud, and they're now reaching out to us for solutions because they're having troubles. Depending on what they are printing, it might still make sense to keep your jobs local to the environment, so print jobs come out quickly, especially when using secure or find me printing. Jobs are released while the user is at the device. Should be deployed into remote sites to allow for print jobs to be spooled locally. This reduces the need for jobs to be sent back and forth from a centralized print server to the remote destination printer. In these cases, multiple print servers are deployed to handle load distribution and minimize bandwidth requirements. Example of one of your customer sites that's not using any print management. They may have a connected branch office with its own print server, yet nothing is there to monitor connections and take over in case of a network failure, as we see by the big red X. There could be many reasons for the outage. Perhaps their ISP is intermittent. Maybe the main server glitched, who knows? End result is that employees at Site B are hampered and are unable to perform basic duties of their job since they cannot access the copier or print in any way, shape, or form. This is where the solution architect can come in and discuss the situation while providing a solution to their problem. A result of what happens when we incorporate a site server in the equation. These images show the changes in how elements of a PaperCut solution communicate when a site server is deployed. These now communicate with the site server and will ensure an outage between site server and application server is defended by the site server. You will now have full capability with the device in the event the application server has a problem. Print servers also communicate with the site server when the application server is unavailable, so Find Me, Secure, and Mobility Print will now all fail over effectively. Operations where the site server and the application server are connected, the two servers together deliver the full set of PaperCut functionality. In anticipation of an outage, the site server also caches an up-to-date set of application server data, not including passwords from a directory service. PaperCut does not cache those passwords for security reasons, and you wouldn't want it to. So you can be assured that a user's network password will remain confidential. In the unlikely event of an outage, the site server immediately takes over to deliver business continuity. When the link is reestablished, normal operation resumes, and offline job logs and transactions are submitted to the application server. An effective way to consider where a PaperCut site server should be deployed is to install a site server in any network segment where you have concerns about the link reliability between this segment and the application server, and an outage to the segment would impact your business. Things like remote sites, city offices, separate campuses, individual buildings with poor links, or maybe local sites where servers are on a private cloud. Site servers ensure high availability of print resources. Let's take a look at this chart. You can find it on the knowledge base at www.papercut.com/KB. The limitations of site servers and why we refer to this as high availability and not redundancy. User client, scripting services, and payment options are not available during an outage. Offline policies will fill the gaps, allowing users to continue to work. Offline policies are available after installing your first site server. We'll take a look at what those policies are during the live demo coming up in just a couple of minutes. Security is top mind for many people today. You might want to consider implementing a signed certificate for SSL communications. Optional, of course, and you might even want to review our past webinar on securing your devices. All of the past webinars available on the ACDI YouTube channel at ACDI Videos. Site, multi-server, resilient deployment with site servers. Hey, please keep in mind that the site and print server software are typically installed on one physical server, not split up as we're actually showing here in the diagrams. And here's some great news. Previously, you only got one site server with your instance of PaperCut, and if you needed more, they were an extra cost. Now, with the new simplified licensing, site servers are included at no additional cost, as many as you need for your installation. How cool is that? And prerequisites for installing site servers are straightforward. First of all, you just want to make sure that the PaperCut app server is installed and currently working properly. Then at the branch location or other site, get the print drivers installed on the server and make sure they work, just like you do with a normal PaperCut install. Install the site server software, and if the use case requires it, mobility print. And we're going to do that here in just a moment. I want to mention a caveat about mobility print with site servers. If you have sites with site servers, you need to install mobility print on each print server at each site, including both the application server and the site servers. So do please take note of that. Partners at a site are published to devices at that site. And also let me throw this at you. If you want to connect directly with the application server when the site server is down, you can configure your print providers to attempt to connect directly with the application server. What you'll do is open the following file in a text editor. Let me go ahead and type this out for you. It's the app path, providers, print, win, print-provider.config, and then add a new line with redirect fallback server equals the application server IP address and the port. The PaperCut print provider service, and test to make sure that everything is working as desired. Let's take a look at this in action. I've got my app server. It's set up and running. You may have seen that in some previous webinars. And I've just installed a printer on another server and tested it, and it works. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my VM, and we'll go ahead and take a look. Now, I've gone ahead and downloaded the installers for the PaperCut MF and also for Mobility Print. Mobility Print's only like 20 meg, 21 and a half here. So that would have taken just a moment, but I went ahead and grabbed it. The PaperCut installer is still smaller than iTunes, a full iTunes installation. We're at about a half a gig, 472 meg. Let's go ahead and just get this started. Right click, run as administrator is always a good practice for any good software. There's an indicator here after 19.0 now. We do have this disclaimer coming up, if you will, talking about the fact that PaperCut no longer supports 32-bit workstations, at least as far as the installer goes inside of PaperCut. If you still have 32-bit clients, you can still use them with the latest version of PaperCut. We updated the version of Java on the inside. You might have remembered me talking about that with version 19.0. Went from version 8 up to version 11, which is totally 64-bit. Kind of a long explanation. I could have probably just read this little bit here in the setup, but I wanted you to know what that was all about. Again, if you need a 32-bit client, then pull it from an earlier install of PaperCut, and you can still use it, just that they're not shipped inside of a 64-bit edition now of PaperCut. All right, here's the EULA agreement. This end user license agreement is between... I'm not going to read that. You don't read that either, do you? Let's go into this part. Here's the information. One thing I do want to point out in the installation is right here. Many people ask me for a trial license. I want to install PaperCut and I need a trial license. Well, you really don't need a license. It says it right here, 40-day evaluation. PaperCut MF will fully function for 40 days. The software is not crippled or restricted. So that's pretty cool. It's a wide open version of the software. Just install PaperCut with this installer and you'll have a version of PaperCut running for 40 days. Wide open. Pretty cool stuff. All right, default path, I'll go ahead and take that. Of course, you can change it. Here's the next part, which is really important. There's a drop down here, and this will determine what we're actually installing. So you don't have to look all over for different pieces of software for PaperCut. It's pretty cool. So in the drop down, I've got, of course, our standard installation. There's nothing here, so it might assume that I need to do a standard installation. Though we also have the installer for the secondary print server installation. We used to use this a lot because it's free. You can spin up as many of these secondary servers as you want. Now, the secondary servers are dumb. They need the application server, totally reliant on the application server in order to operate. So keep that in mind. You might not use this anymore because site servers are now unlimited. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Here's your web print server. So if you're doing web print and you're installing in a sandbox mode, putting Microsoft Office on there so you can render Word and Excel and that type of thing, here's the installer for that. And then here now is the site server installation. Once again, with the latest licensing change that we had, these are free. Included, whatever you want to call it, comes with PaperCut, and you can spin up as many of these as you need. And as you can see, this does have a little database that's included and can run independently as well. So let's go ahead and get this going. There's our information, and let's install the product. Right. So while this is going on, I mean, this is like watching paint dry. You know, we just watch these things go by. So let's take a look at a couple of things on the system while this is happening. My resources might be a little bit taxed as we do this, but let's go ahead and take a look. All right, this is the server that I'm running. I say server, but you know what? It's Windows 10. I'm doing a Windows 10 insider preview, so that's why it's not activated. I'll probably tear it down after the demo. I've got some other software here that we'll be trying out. But here's your regular printers that just get installed when you install Windows, but here's the one that I actually did just install. I call it Tiger PCL. I just wanted to know what kind it was there too. So Tiger is the name of the actual printer. So there we go. That's the printer that is on this site server. I installed it, tested it, made sure it worked, just like you would want to do on a regular PaperCut install as well. Always remember that. Make sure your printers work before you install PaperCut. If you do that, you'll have a much better response with PaperCut when you know that things work. Here's my customized front. Like the rock and roll. Many of you know that, so I put a bunch of rock and roll stuff on mine. Let's go ahead and log in. Keep in mind, you can always customize your instance of PaperCut, make it look like it's a part of the organization. That's what's pretty cool about it. All right, so here's everything that I've got running in my system currently. This is 19.1.5, came out on Monday, so I've installed that, and I'll go over to my Sites tab. I do already have one other site server running. This particular server here is called Alpine Valley, and I've got a server running here called Deer Creek. That's my site server, so that's already installed. When you have a site server installed, you'll have the Sites tab on the left, and then you'll have offline policies at the top here, one of the tabs. Let's take a look at what these offline policies are and how you can adjust things. First of all, I will point out that under each section, you're going to see a little green link, just like you see all over PaperCut, with more information and a question mark. This will bring you to the new style help center. It's been redesigned as of 19.1, so some really easy to get to information. This brings us right to all of the stuff here. Account selection, restricted credit, all the stuff I'm going to talk about in just a moment. So you'll see is right here in the Help Center, easily accessible by question marks all throughout the system. And don't forget, in the upper right is your main question mark for the entire manual that you can get online while you are inside of PaperCut. Cool stuff. My customer here wants to use account selections, and they're running the client, and they're, tagging their jobs with a shared account. And if that's the scenario and you've got this working, remember the client run if the application server is down. So what are we going to do if we're selecting accounts for the jobs? Well, I can tag it to a specific shared account. The one here is called offline account. Maybe create something that makes more sense to you, or use one that you currently have. I could automatically charge this to a personal account or cancel the job. So again, what do you want to have happen if there's an account selection needed? What is that going to do when we're offline? Credit. Maybe let's do that. There we go. Restricted credit. You're in a situation where you're using money for any of the print jobs. If that's the case, what do you want to have happen with the users when they're printing? The default is use the last known balance. Remember, we're going to sync every once in a while with the application server, so we might have a pretty good idea of what that balance is. However, maybe just in case you want to give them a couple of dollars extra if there is an outage. It's not really their fault that there's an outage. So this is all determined by your end user. What is their policy going to be when they, want to apply money? So use the last known balance and allow overdraft by, and then, put an amount here. You could go ahead and just allow the job to proceed regardless of the balance. We'll catch up with it later. And if they, owe you some money, it depends on how that organization wants to take care of it. It's always up to them. It's really not up to us. What does your end user need to do with this stuff? Or just assume no credit, deny any job charged to the restricted accounts. Look at unauthenticated users. This might be a situation where you've got a mobile job comes in. We don't know who that user is. How do we want to handle that? Do we want to just assign it to somebody, an unknown or somebody else that's in your system there? I don't track it. Just allow the job to print or cancel the job. So I've got some nice options there for the unauthenticated users. And now let's talk about user password authentication. Remember when I talked about the synchronization and everything, we don't cache passwords from the directory service like Active Directory. We're not bringing those in. We're querying Active Directory in real time, just seeing if the user is enabled or disabled. So we're not going to really touch that password. If we go offline with the application server, which is most likely the print server, the authentication server might be on a different server. You might be able to access it, so you can authenticate. If that's the case, your default action here is attempt password authentication from the site server, from the site server itself, from Active Directory. So it'll Active Directory and bring the information over. Again, not the password, but just are they okay? If they're all on one, or you anticipate that that outage is going to be something more critical where they can't access Active Directory to log in, therefore they might not be able to log into a multifunctional device or maybe even a web page, then you might want to change this to password login denied and use card ID or authentication only. So you can use the identification number or the cards for all that kind of stuff. So there's our offline policies in what we can do and how we can trigger our sites to use the different things that we need so that users can keep going throughout the system. Our installer's done. So let me go ahead and bring this up, and I'll click finish, and this will now bring up the configuration page for the site server. It's really easy, just a couple of things we need to do. The name of this site server, it's pulling the name of the computer. In this case, it's Horizon 2. That's fine. I use Horizon 1 in one of my other applications. So Horizon 2 is fine. What I'm going to do now is attach to the site or the application server. I told you the name of that server is Alpine Valley. And even though I'm in a work group, I can go ahead and hit that because I'm telling it to use Alpine Valley. So there we go. I'm connected. Because I'm connected now, it says, well, what's the password for the application server? And the admin account there. So let's go ahead and put that in. Authenticated. I'm done. Here we go. This is the synchronization that I was talking about, where a little bit of the data from the app server itself is going to be synced over to the site server. I've got a login down here for the application server because if I'm on this one and I use, local host, I'm going to actually get into the So if I need to get to the application server, here's my login capability there. Of course, I'm still on a tab open over here, but I'm synced. Everything's done. Save the password. I'm done there. So I'm logged in. I've been installed a site. Let's go over to my sites tab. See this in just a moment. The other thing that we can do then is move a device over to the sites so that, again, if the application server goes down, then we're able to control a multifunctional unit in the sites itself. Having just a little bit of a delay here. I've noticed sometimes when I do screen shares, I won't pick on the medium that I'm using today, but lately some of my screenshots have gone south. So it takes a while. I think it's because it's rendering. I've also had some RDP issues lately too, so I'm glad it's been holding solid. I've had a couple of times when it's just dropped out. The Windows build of 1903 has had some issues there too. So if all of a sudden you lose me, you'll know what happened there. All right, here's our sites. Here's Horizon 2. Remember, that's the one that I just did. So I can go ahead and click on this and I can take a look at what we have available in Horizon 2. And this is really just pretty much the same setup, the server name. Maybe I want to go ahead and give it a location. Maybe I'd rather use a DNS name, use Horizon 2 instead of the IP, etc. And here, if you want to, I could force this to go offline so I could test my configuration and see how the site server's working. I mean, yeah, I could just yank a network jack too. That would easily do it. But I do have the capability right inside of the site server configuration to be able to do that stuff. So wanted to point that out for you as well. We also notice that I've got on Deer Creek, I've got a hosted device, but on Horizon 2, I don't. Some devices, let's see, I might have to wake these up, but some devices give me the capability to control that inside of PaperCut. Some devices I actually need to change like a configuration file or an application that gets loaded. We work with 19 different manufacturers and everybody's just slightly different in how things are set up. I'm going to pick on this HP here if it wakes up in just a moment. See, I'm actually able to change where that server is hosted inside of PaperCut. And you can see it right here on the display. Here's all the devices I have in my MF instance. Most of them are hosted on the application server, but I do have this one that's hosted on the Deer Creek server. Give this just a moment here to log in. I think it's still trying to wake up the device. I should have maybe turned that on a little bit earlier. Some of these can take a moment to get going. Don't always want to have dead air in the webinars, unless it's the Grateful Dead, of course. Then I like dead air, but that's beside the point. So here's my HP. have this listed up here. Here's where it is hosted on. This one I'm able to do, so I can go ahead and change this. And you can see, you know, I'll go ahead and select Horizon 2, click OK. Don't be a dummy like me and forget to come down and click OK. If you don't do that, it won't set it up as well for you. So now my site server is looking at Rosebud. That's my HP device. And if I click back over on sites here, we will now see that I have a device hosted on Horizon 2 as well. Very cool stuff. So there we go. That's how easy it was to set up a site server, get a device connected and working. Now, if Alpine Valley drops out, I can go ahead and use Rosebud over on Horizon 2 effectively, because I do have identity numbers available. Maybe the use case then requires mobility print. So let's take a look at that. Mobility print in 19.1 and above is now under this tab on the left here called Enable Printing. I do want to point that out. Not under options. So if you go to options looking for mobility and you don't see it, don't think that you've got to reinstall something or you've got a problem. Click on Enable Printing. Here is the latest print deploy. We talked about this a couple of months ago when it came out on the webinar. You can, of course, review that webinar on the ACDI videos YouTube page. But this is print deploy. Quick review. I take a reference computer, I upload a driver into PaperCut, whether it's a Mac or a Windows driver. I've got clients down here for Windows and Mac. They get deployed to the end user's workstation. And when a user walks into a zone, which you can identify here with different zones, then print drivers are automatically installed in the system. Real cool stuff. So that just came out working really well, and a lot of people are digging that. So check it out. That's Print Deploy. A basic version comes included with PaperCut. If you need more zones, then that's the Print Enablement Pack. But that was the topic from a couple of months ago. Let's go into mobile and BYOD, because this is where I want to get my mobility print server going. You can see I followed best practice. I have a mobility print Alpine Valley on the main server. I've got Deer Creek is also running my other mobility print server. If we scroll down in here, this is where we see all the other stuff. Here's web print. I've got Auditorium running web print in the sandbox mode. I've got Google Cloud Print turned on. I've got email to print all enabled. So all this stuff is available for you, just, you know, a couple of check boxes away in most cases to get all this stuff up and running. So you want to install mobility print. You don't have the installer. Real easy. Right over here, add a new mobility print server, or have any install. Show up right here in the middle, but you click on this, brings you into this page, download the mobility print server, again, all of 21.5 meg, and you'll be ready to go. Remember, I went ahead and did that. Right click, run as administrator, get this going, except I won't read this one to you like I did the last time. Now, I want to point this out for you. Part of the installer for mobility print is this thing called Ghost Trap. It's some open source software that's really cool. If you read the technical details about mobility print, you'll find out that we really are changing everything into a PDF, and Ghost Trap will help us do that. So you really do want to install this. It says you can manually install, but I would highly suggest and recommend that you go ahead and take this installer right here. We'll go ahead and click next, change the path if you want to. One more time for the information, and then we'll install. See, mobility print is just a terrible, terrible install. We're actually going to watch this whole thing here, and there it is. So it's pretty much done. It's just now setting some things up. The web page. Here's our mobility print admin page. This runs on port 9163, 9164 if you're doing SSL. So here's the mobility print server. Right now, it's just looking at the printers that are on this server. It's discovering them. It's going to identify them. It already has. So if I look at select printers, I will see that there's Tiger PCL. Remember, we looked at that in my print management tool. It's published, comes default as published. I can turn it on or off. I can also authenticate per job on or off right here. Maybe if it's a shared device. So I want to have them authenticate for each job. Go ahead and just tick that button and you'll be good to go. Here's the URL that can be pushed out to folks in this particular branch. When I click on this, it shows me how to set up a Windows device because I'm on Windows. It defaults to that. It knows what I'm on and will bring me the information. A little minute-and-a-half video. This would actually install a print driver on a Windows device. Same thing with Mac. We'll install a print driver. Android and Chrome, they're going to use an app. They're in their respective stores, also in the links here as you take a look at that. And let's also take a quick look at iOS. Got like a minute video here. The biggest thing is to turn on Wi-Fi, as iOS works just like AirPrint. So that's what we're going to take a look at. Let me go ahead and drop out of it. Tabs here. Bring this handy dandy little thing up here. This is a trial version of something called Lonely Screen. I'm picking up my iOS device. And yes, we'll do that later. And do a screen share. I had that happen earlier today. This is not PaperCut. This is something else. Get that going for the error, or maybe I can go ahead. Yeah. Still give me that. There it is. Okay, so I've got my iOS device up and running, and I've got Word. Let me go ahead and open up Word. I've got just a test, our typical good test documents that we always run. Let's go ahead and do this, and it works just like AirPrint. So I'm going to go ahead and hopefully hit the ellipsis here. There we go. Go ahead and press print. I don't have anything installed on here. I don't have to install anything on an iOS. It's going to work just like AirPrint. Now let's take a look at my printers. I'm all, everything's broadcasting. I'm in a work group. So, Alpine Valley, Deer Creek's all broadcasting. I'm seeing everything. They're all identified by the server name below each of these. But there now is Tiger PCL right in the middle. Now, I've done this demo a couple of times, and I install and I uninstall. So when I press this, I'm going to get kind of a security warning because it says the printer Tiger PCL appears to be a different printer than the previously used printer with the same name, or the connection may not be trustworthy. If this is expected, tap continue. Now, it is expected because I've been playing with this, installing it, uninstalling it. So it's seen it before, that's just iOS. But I know it's trustworthy. I'll go ahead and continue because this is the one that I want to use, Tiger PCL. We see it there. And then I'll go ahead and press print. This actually has already been authenticated to the user that I'm doing. If I had ticked that button there to go ahead and authenticate for each job, then it would have actually prompted me to put in my PaperCut username and password. So that's how easy it was. You might be hearing a printer in the background kicking up and sending out the job. I hope you do. Got some noise cancellation, so you might not see everything. At any event, there we go. Let's go ahead and stop the mirroring. On this, let's open up PaperCut again. Over here. Here is now Horizon 2 showing up in the mobility print area here. So we know that that's running. We can check our status and everything. Let me go to my dashboard. And I should see that I had a print up here. That came in today. I should have showed you. You may have noticed when I first opened this up, I didn't have a print job there. And let's even go to our logs. Be able to see everything logged in here appropriately as well. So give this just a second. The dashboard is always great. I love talking about the dashboard because you're seeing all this information, all your system status, your printer status, real-time status, environmental impact, all that kind of good stuff is happening here. Just another delay from my screen share on the logs. But you can see that it did record this. You can see the date there, 10/17, so that it did grab it. So even though we're not getting to the log in time, in a timely fashion, and and the sweat starts dripping down my temples. So oh, there we go. I just had to say that so we could see it. The user was Bruce Hornsby. I use a lot of musicians, so Bruce had signed in. Mobility Print does not do print archiving, so let's point that out. I don't get a picture of the job like I do in some of my regular Windows prints you can see down here, but there it is. You can see that I have logged this automatically to a shared account. This is where it came from, Horizon 2, Tiger PCL. Remember, that's all the stuff that we just installed. One page, cost me a penny, came from Word, and then all the details about the job. So there we have it. I mean, that's how easy it is to do everything. And honestly, I'm really glad that it didn't look like this. I mean, ever do a demo and have something like that? But that's hardware sometimes. Software can be easier unless you have RDP issues. And we didn't today, so that's good. So we installed a site server and a mobility print during this short webinar. I mean, that's really what makes PaperCut so great. It's easy to work with, chocked full of features that in many cases that can be just turned on without any extra licensing, like these servers. You can install them all day long. And as you saw, it really doesn't take you very long either. You do want to make sure that your site servers are at the same version as the application server. Now, this is a little different than other PaperCut things, like clients that are backward compatible. When you have site servers, you'll want to upgrade them when you upgrade the application server. Just keep that in mind when you're planning for upgrades. Site servers address high availability needs for your customers. Those that need redundancy or failover can accomplish that with their operating system, and that's much easier now with virtual systems. Redundant systems can require a lot more scoping than really what we can provide in a webinar. So if you need more information about redundancy or load balancing, just send an email to presale.support@acd-inc.com. Our solution architects will reply right back to you. Moment, fill out the surveys, let us know what you thought about this webinar and what you'd like to see on the next one. Or just email me at thedoctor@acd-inc.com. That's thedoctor@acd-inc.com. I'd love to hear from you. Coming up right after our trivia question for those of you live, thanks for joining me today. I'm the doctor for ACDI.